Mr. Speaker, the end of that response bore little resemblance to its beginning. What is the point of having a lawyer instead of a leader as Prime Minister if he cannot even interpret the law correctly on a matter of national importance? A British MP has just ended the Prime Minister's career in less than 15 minutes. No shouting, no disorder, just calm precision and irrefutable evidence. This is how one dismantles power with politeness. Inside the House of Commons, Kemi Badenoch rose with a single objective: to expose a cover-up threatening every elected representative in Britain. A spy case, collapsed evidence, and a government suddenly unable to recall its own statements about China. What followed was not merely politics. It was a public unraveling conducted through a PowerPoint presentation. Before we examine this moment by moment, a quick note. If you want more political breakdowns that explain what's truly happening, subscribe. Most of you watch without doing so, and it's the simplest way to support this kind of reporting. Done? Right. Let's move into the aftermath. Here's what you need to know. 2 individuals were charged with spying on British MPs on behalf of China. The case appeared solid. MI5 was involved. The charges were in place. And then abruptly, the entire prosecution collapsed. The government's explanation? Vague, evasive, and deeply questionable. But Kemi Badenoch came prepared. She didn't merely ask questions. She presented a detailed timeline, official documents, direct quotations, and evidence that couldn't be dismissed. And she was about to make the Prime Minister regret every remark he'd made about China. This was the session where a reputation crumbled before the nation's eyes. Proceedings began with respect, a moment of silence for Sir David Amess, the MP tragically murdered in 2021. A solemn reminder that Parliament's security is no trivial matter. It is one of life and death. And that is precisely why the collapse of this spy case is so profoundly serious. Badenoch wastes no time. She rises and asks the Prime Minister directly, why did this case collapse? How could the government fail to supply the evidence prosecutors required? The Prime Minister responds with what can only be described as a political shrug. He insists, the evidence was submitted back in 2023 under the previous government. Not our responsibility. Not our problem. But Badenoch isn't there for excuses. She's there for answers. She produces her first piece of evidence. In 2021, the UK government's integrated review officially designated China as the greatest state-based threat to Britain's economic security. That's not a commentary. That's official government policy. Then she presents another. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 publicly declared China a threat, on record and in front of cameras, and no ambiguity whatsoever. So, if the entire government acknowledged China as a threat, if MI5 was sounding the alarm, and if the charges were based on strong evidence, why did the prosecution collapse? The Prime Minister falters. He attempts to deflect, arguing that the previous government had deliberately avoided using the word enemy to describe China. He quotes a former foreign secretary who said, calling China a threat in a single word would be impossible, impractical, and unwise. Badenoch doesn't flinch. She's ready. She fires back with another quotation, this time from the current leader of the opposition, who in September 2023 stated, "We should not be describing China as a foe." Then she goes one step further, reminding the House that the Prime Minister himself once said, "I have shied away from calling China a threat." The atmosphere shifts. MPs lean forward as Badenoch exposes the heart of the issue. This isn't about one government versus another. Both sides softened their stance on China. Both avoided decisive language. And now, a crucial spy case has collapsed because of it. Then comes the turning point. The Prime Minister attempts to defend himself, claiming that Badenoch took his remark out of context. He insists, if you read the full quote, I did describe China as a threat. Badenoch's reply is utterly composed, cold as ice. You can read the start of a quote as much as you like. But the fact remains, those spies were charged under a Conservative government and released under Labour. You have not answered the question. The Prime Minister has no response, and the silence in that moment says everything. Then Badenoch drops the revelation that changes the entire exchange. The Sunday Times reported that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's national security advisor, held a secret meeting to discuss the security implications of the China spy trial. Did that meeting take place? Or is the Sunday Times fabricating the story? The chamber falls silent. This is the moment everyone has been waiting for. The Prime Minister hesitates, calculating, before replying that a meeting did occur in September. but it did not involve the National Security Advisor discussing the evidence in any way. Badenoch isn't convinced. If a meeting was held, who attended? What was discussed? And why does the security minister claim that only the Deputy National Security Advisor, one individual, had full authority over the decision? The Prime Minister insists no ministers were involved, no advisors, just the deputy, granted complete freedom to decide. Badenoch's voice cuts sharply through the chamber. Is the government seriously suggesting that a single man was solely responsible for this failure? Did he not consult the National Security Advisor? Did he not speak to the Home Secretary? Did he not contact anyone in Downing Street? It sounds implausible, and everyone in the room knows it. Here's the issue, and Badenoch lays it out like a prosecutor delivering her closing statement. The charges were filed in April 2024. The Crown Prosecution Service confirmed the evidence was robust and the decision to prosecute was sound. The case was proceeding as planned. Then, the new government took office, and suddenly, the case collapsed. The CPS later released a statement confirming it remained satisfied that the charges were correct under the law at that time. So what changed? Badenoch demands an answer. Something must have changed between the moment the charges were filed and when the case collapsed. The charges were brought under our government. The collapse happened under theirs. Can the Prime Minister tell us what changed? The Prime Minister vows transparency. He promises to publish the witness statements and release all relevant material. Parliament, he says, will see precisely what evidence was submitted in 2023 and what was added later, but not today. He insists he must follow the proper process first and notify those involved. Badenoch isn't convinced. That's not good enough. If there's nothing to hide, she demands, then publish the witness statements today. Publish the meeting minutes. Release all correspondence with the CPS. Show us everything. The delay, she suggests, reeks of guilt. Then the Prime Minister makes a serious error. He tries to undermine Badenoch personally, remarking that she is clearly not a lawyer or a leader. It's a cheap shot, and the chamber reacts instantly. MPs erupt. The tension rises sharply because personal attacks in Parliament, while technically permitted, almost always signal desperation, but Badenoch doesn't flinch. She refuses to take the bait. Instead, she strikes harder. She reminds the House that this same Prime Minister recently voiced full confidence in an individual closely linked to a convicted pedophile. Her words are cutting. Forgive us if we don't believe a word you say. The damage is done. The Prime Minister's credibility has taken a fatal blow, and Badenoch still isn't finished. This reeks of a cover-up, she declares as the chamber explodes in uproar. She accuses the government of blaming everyone but itself, civil servants, the media, even the previous administration, while still failing to explain why it withheld the evidence prosecutors needed to carry this case through. Then she delivers the line that will haunt the government for months to come. A serious case involving national security has collapsed because this government is too weak to stand up to China. Let that sink in. Weak on national security, weak on China. In full view of Parliament, the Prime Minister attempts to respond, but his words are drowned out by the uproar of MPs. The moment has already slipped away. The narrative is set. Badenoch leans into the microphone one final time, her voice calm, measured, and precise. If the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, what does that say about his ability to protect this country? Silence. The kind of silence that follows when a line lands so powerfully, so precisely, that there's no rebuttal, no spin, no defense. The Prime Minister sits motionless. His team scrambles, but the moment is already captured. That clip will appear on every news channel, podcast, and social media feed within the hour. Kemi Badenoch has just executed the political equivalent of checkmate. Let's recap what unfolded. A spy case involving Chinese espionage targeting British MPs collapsed under the current government's watch. The Prime Minister shifted blame to the previous administration, yet the evidence shows China was officially designated a threat years ago. A secret meeting was held, but no one will clarify what was discussed. When challenged on transparency, the government stalled. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch arrived with a timeline, official statements, and no tolerance for evasive answers. She exposed contradictions, demanded accountability, and delivered a closing line that will define this government's vulnerability on national security. This wasn't a debate. It was a dismantling. And the Prime Minister has just learned what happens when you enter Parliament. unprepared. If you want more breakdowns, like this, cutting through the political spin to reveal what's really happening, subscribe now and share your thoughts below. But was Kemi right to call it a cover-up, or is this just political theater? Let's discuss, because one thing is certain. In British politics, being polite doesn't mean being kind. And today, someone learned that the hard way.